Hey folks, welcome to another episode of Borderline Uncomfortable. I'm Diamond.
And I'm Christian.
And here is a space where it's okay to know nothing but philosophize about everything. I just want to do a quick check-in. CJ, how are you doing today?
The same. That's how I'm doing today. How are you?
I am, I'm feeling, outside of this episode, I'm feeling okay. This content matter gives me a lot of anxiety, but overall I'm fine. So I guess we can just jump right into it. CJ, how have your parents fucked you up?
That's right, folks. This is the episode that is highly requested by 4 of y'all. Today we're going to talk about all 4. Today we're going to talk about your mama, your papa, and your bow-headed grandma. She she thinks she broke a nail like Frankenstein.
Don't do that. But we are though. We're coming for everybody's neck.
No, we're actually going to try to be... Oh, well, actually, there's something I want to say in terms of how I'm feeling. I did want to say something about last week's episode. That episode for me was the one that was keeping me up at night. Even before we shot it, as I was editing it, once it was released, because I felt, one, as I mentioned in that episode, that because we have people who have children around us, people that we're close to who are currently pregnant, so I was nervous about having that conversation, but also afterward, when it's out there and I'm just like, oh my gosh, I was being too judgmental. I felt like I wasn't being understanding enough for the people who were taking the time to answer us and give us their honest opinions and feelings. I felt like I was being very dismissive. So I want to say I'm sorry for those people who I did offend and turn off to that conversation. So hopefully moving forward, I could just be a little bit more mindful that people have feelings. And just because I don't agree with something doesn't mean that it's wrong or I have to cut y'all down. So there's that. But yeah, this one is about parents. And now, Diamond, you're feeling anxious.
I am. I'm feeling incredibly anxious. This is super sensitive to me. It hits very close to home, which is why I feel so anxious. Whereas with last week's episode, it was like, I don't got kids, so I don't care. Don't have them. And when you ready, and only have them when you're ready. So I was able to talk more shit because it was coming from a different place, but because this is so sensitive to me and it's very real to me. It's just it hits a little different. Mm-hmm. So with that being said, let's get over our discomfort and jump right in. CJ, how is the relationship that you have with your parents? What does that look like?
Well, I guess we could start with my relationship with my parents because it's the boring version of this episode, or the boring part of this episode. My relationship with my parents is pretty fine. I could gush about my parents. I could also, of course, there are things I could complain about too, but I feel like overall, I like where I'm at with my parents, and I think it's only getting better. There is the thing that I was uncomfortable talking to my parents about, though, is my homosexuality. And that is because my parents are Christians. I was so fearful of having this conversation with them, of bringing sharing this part of my life with them, because I didn't want them to fear for me. When they're alone and they're not around me, they're going to be praying hard for me, and they're going to be so worried that that my soul is going to hell for all of eternity. So I just didn't want to share that part of my life with them because I didn't want to constantly remind them that yeah, your son's going to hell. That's pretty much what I felt like I was saying to them, or what I would be saying to them. Luckily, I haven't been in a serious relationship for 10 years, so I didn't feel no, so I really have nothing to share. But that was one thing that scared me, and I never actually came out to them my in a way that I wanted to. In my time, my dad actually caught me with my high school boyfriend in my bedroom. Yeah, that night. Whew, he walked in on me and him munching each other's lips off, and
That's a way to put it.
And he kicked him out. You know, he was angry, and then he sat on my bed, and we were crying at each other. And then we ended up hugging, and him telling me, "You're still my son. I still love you." And the whole thing is just, it's not right. You know, it's not what God wants for us. And it's always been that story. So I was very, again, grateful that I didn't have parents that were going to disown me or start hating me or even treating me differently. They did not start treating me differently. But I still didn't feel comfortable sharing this part of my life because of that, because I knew they couldn't really accept it as something that was okay. And flash forward 10 years later, a little more than 10 years, I finally found the courage to bring it up to them again. And it was because I was moving away from my belief in God, and I had all these questions. And so I was talking with them about Christianity, and it felt like this was the time to do it, because this was one of the reasons why I struggle with believing in God. And so I sort of just reminded them that, hey, your son is still gay. And it felt good to say it again, but I didn't, after a couple, I guess a couple days after the conversation, and I took a step back to reflect on that move, that step forward, it didn't really feel like a step forward, only because we were in the same spot. They gave me the same responses they gave me 10 years ago. And I'm still feeling like, oh, well, maybe I just don't tell them about this part of my life, because it's not like they're going to change about what they think about homosexuality. So then a couple months after that, me and my mom were talking about relationships, and she says, I just want you to find someone that makes you happy. And I said to her, well, that might be different. That might look differently to us, for us, because for me, it's a guy. For you, it's a woman, right? Like, you want me to be with a woman, and I'm going to end up with a guy. And I asked her, I said, well, how would you feel about me bringing a man home? You know, a man that I'm dating, and to meet you guys. How would you feel about coming to my wedding if I have one and it's a man? And she said, she said that when she first found out, or when it first became official that her son is gay for her, she had nightmares. And it was really, really hard for her. Of course, she was doing the whole praying for me thing, and not with me, but sort of in her own time, in her own privacy, which I appreciated. But she said a couple years ago, she found this peace, that she thinks God gave her this peace of mind about it. She says that she believes I'm going to be okay. And she could just be in denial, but the way she was, you know, it sounded so genuine. She said that she's not worried about me. She just wants me to be happy, however that looks like for me. And it just, at that moment, that conversation felt like the step forward. That's when I felt really, truly like there was a weight lifted from me, because now I don't have now I now I could bring home my man. Now I could tell her, hey, I found this guy and we're dating, and maybe I'm not gonna rub it in her face all the time, but I could be honest about that stuff. And my dad wasn't a part of that conversation, but my mom says that he feels the same. I guess I won't know until I truly ask him, but I do feel the way where the place where my dad and I are now, I do feel a lot of support from him. So yeah, I'm just happy to be moving forward with that part. It's getting less and less uncomfortable to be gay around my parents.
Okay. Well, that's a beautiful thing. Can't relate. It just looks a little different over here. So, the relationship that I have with my parents, it's maybe not as bad as I'm making it seem. Or maybe it is. I don't know. But I have two very different relationships with my parents. The relationship that I have with my dad is beautifully blossoming. He's a very interesting human. Anyone who knows him will understand exactly what I mean. He's a very interesting being, who I often go to, even from when I was a kid, who I would often go to for like every perspective, because for like some way, somehow he sees it in every which way. And through that, I get my answer most of the time, which is always great. Whereas with my mom, the relationship is also, it's fine, but there's room for improvement. And this is why it's so uncomfortable for me to talk about this. This is why there's such an internal struggle. It just looks a lot different. It's sometimes a little bit more stagnant, or I would even say strained. At least that's my interpretation. That's how I feel. I can't speak for anyone else, but that's how I feel oftentimes. In that dynamic, they can both be a little draining. Both people can be a little draining to me sometimes. But I don't think that's abnormal for any relationship, any parent to child relationship. Overall, the relationship that I have with my dad, I would say, like I said before, is blooming, it's blossoming. And I'm learning so much more about him, and he's learning more about me, and where our communication is like kind of top notch. And currently with my mom, that's something that I need to work on myself, because I'm harboring a lot of emotions that I don't think she's aware of.
Why do you feel like it's harder to work on that relationship with your mom than it is with your dad?
Boom. There goes the dynamite. So why is it more difficult to have that relationship with my mom as opposed to my dad is a question. So with my dad, he is almost too transparent. You ask him a question. If he knows, he knows. If he doesn't, he doesn't. If he's uncomfortable, he'll let you know. It's just, there's that flexibility, with him. It's that honesty and that flexibility. And with him, he leaves that space for both of you to learn and both of you to openly communicate and to dissect the issue, however you are comfortable with, and that's what makes it so easy for me to go to him. Whereas with my mom, it's not always like that. With my mom, it's more so if I'm talking to her about something, it's like, okay, she looks at it. And this is where maybe I get this from her. it almost seems like she looks at everything as a list, you know, or like a chart. And it's, this is the problem. Yeah, it'll be like a circle chart. This is the problem. This is the pro. This is the con. This is the solution. And sometimes it's not that black and white. Sometimes that's not what I need or want. Sometimes I just want to engage in conversation, and I want for us to, while we're engaging in that conversation, I want to learn about you so I can relate to you. But it's not ever that. It's always, okay, so this is your problem and this is how you're going to solve it. But that's not what I want us to talk about. I don't want you to talk to me or talk at me and tell me how to solve it. I want you to listen to me and just let's have a conversation about it, you know? So I'm going to bring something up. I don't know if we'll keep it or not. I don't know. But so a couple of weeks ago, I can't remember who it was, which is so unfortunate that I have to say that. But a couple weeks ago, there was a Black man who was murdered by the police, and it was, you know, it was captured on film, and it was all over social media, the news. And I remember I actually called you crying, and I was pretty hysterical because I was thinking about my little brother and just all the Black men that are dying. And I was just overwhelmed with like the negativity, right? And so I called you when I was pretty upset, and you were just listening to me. And then my mom knocks on my door, and so I hang up with you to talk to her. And in that moment, I'm sitting on my couch and I'm crying, and I'm visibly upset. And sometimes, like I said before, sometimes you just want someone to come down to your level and talk to you mano y mano, right? I don't want you to talk to me like the parent. I just want you to talk to me like a human, or not even talk, just listen, you know? And so my mom's in my room, and she did listen to me. I made it very brief because I know how she gets, but she did listen to me. And then she essentially was like, well, you know what? Instead of crying about it, do something about it, which I agree. But also, you don't know what I do. And in this moment, I'm crying because I feel away. So maybe give me a hug instead of telling me what to do about it. Or, so everybody wins. While you're hugging me, say, what are we going to do about it? You know? So that happens far too often. That's something that sometimes I need that. You know, sometimes you need just like a swift kick in the ass and to get over your emotion. I don't want to say that. Sometimes you need someone who's going to hold you accountable, and someone who's not going to always give you sympathy. But it's almost like, instead of sometimes it almost feels like, I'm just going to say it and then we can modify it. It almost feels like she's afraid of her emotions. So she just takes it to a level of like, I don't even know what to call it. Just a level of assertiveness, of a level of just like rigor, instead of showing that emotional side. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, do you feel like, so she's not only building a wall with you, she's building a wall within herself, like protecting herself from herself?
Sure. That could be it too, you know, but I think it sucks when you have to do, when you feel you need to do that, especially with your kids, especially when, I know that's not how you are. I know you're not a very like TLC type person, tender love and care type person, right? But I'm your kid. I'm your child. You birthed me. I didn't ask to be here. And sometimes I want like that nurturing, like real mothering, loving side. And that's not her. And sometimes I feel bad because it's not. And we shouldn't pressure people to do anything that they don't want to do. We shouldn't pressure people that's not her. But also, you're my mama. Yeah, I don't really know her. I know her, but I don't know her. You know, there's, it's hard to understand her because she doesn't let us know her. So like, you know how you've told me stories where your mom will tell you about like not her child, but her youth, mm-hmm. right? And I enjoy listening to you tell those stories because you get excited about it. But I don't have that. I don't really know much. I know she was a cheerleader and that's it. You know, I only know my mom from like when I was born to now. There's like I don't know. Like I just don't understand how we can go for years. I'm nearly 30 and I still know nothing really about you.
Is that the thing that you like are afraid to tell her? Like, why don't I know anything about you? Why don't you open up to me? Or have you done that and then it just doesn't get anywhere?
So I haven't said those words in particular, but there have been times where conversations have come up and we hit that roadblock because there's that wall, that boundary that you put. So no, I haven't said, can I get to know you? You know, really get to know you? No, those words have never escaped my mouth. But part of the issue is because I know that will probably never happen. I just allow this anger to like fester up, which is not fair to anyone because then when I'm angry, I'm like silent but deadly. And it just causes like a lot of unnecessary tension. It causes just a lot of weirdness, you know. I wouldn't say aura, but the vibe is thrown off. But it's hard for me to combat that when I feel when it's like that's all I get, you know? Yeah.
You had said before that you don't like to be uncomfortable, so you're gonna tell me how you feel because you don't want to be in that uncomfortable space. But when it comes to your mom, you're lingering in that anger.
I think it's easier. So, yes, because it's very true that I'm direct, and if I'm uncomfortable, I'll address it for the most part, right? But, it's funny because I was thinking about this. I was like, you know, why is it so difficult for me to approach my mom about my feelings towards her? Because again, I harbor on these feelings and I end up hurting myself. I'll stay in my room because I don't want to engage. Like I'll really hurt myself over this, and I'll create these weird scenarios in my head, all these things. But it's different when it's your mom. And that person holds different value in your life, you know? And it's difficult. And this is probably the only scenario where I'm petrified, maybe, where I'm petrified to engage in this conversation because it's like, I still want validation from this person. I still want love from this person. I still want all those things. That doesn't change, but I also want answers. And it's hard. It sucks. because it's not always that easy.
You know, it's such a strange place to be in, because I imagine it's really important to confront your parents about this, but at what cost? What are you risking by confronting your parents or your mom about this? And
Exactly.
how will she react? And it might be hard for parents to hold themselves accountable to hear that stuff, and then they get very defensive, because raising children is one of the most important things a person will do in their life if they do it. And to hear that your child is not satisfied with how you raise them, or your relationship with them, it's probably really tough to hear. So it's easy to go into like defense mode, or into denial, or deflecting. Yeah,
it's really tough.
Another thing I think we need to stop doing is saying, well, they did the best they could, because when you're wrong, you're wrong. You need to be held accountable for that. It's hard to heal with your parents, because like you said, they're your parents. They're not just anybody. And it's not so much that you don't want to find the best way to communicate with them or deal with them. Sometimes I feel like it's just that you're just so passionate that passion comes out, and it's not conducive to that conversation. When I would talk to my mom in these past couple of months, before we had that recent conversation about my homosexuality, when I would talk to her about religion, I would get, and this wasn't a time where I was starting to realize and starting to figure out how to have conversations with people that wasn't contentious, even if we didn't agree. But then when I would talk to my mom about religion, I'd go into the whole like, well, I don't like it, and this is wrong, and here, and this is why. And I even apologized to her about doing that, because she never attacked me back, and so I was just doing all this attacking because I just so passionately wanted to be right about religion, so that way if she realized I was right, then she didn't have to worry about me being gay. And instead of communicating with her in a way that would have been, again, more conducive to that conversation, I was just letting my passion, because it was important for my mom to be okay with me being gay. And so it was important for her to also not believe in God, because that's the thing that's stopping her from being okay, And if I was talking to a stranger, or just, a friend, I might not have spoken that way. I might have been a little bit more calm. So yeah, that it's hard to have a healing conversation with our parents, because we're so passionate about that. Because like you said, even if they did all these things, they wronged us in these ways, we still want them to love us and validate us. Yeah, I don't know. And some people have to distance themselves from their parents. Like, that's their best course. Maybe to, instead of just trying to heal their relationship with their parents, to really just go the opposite way and not have that negativity in their life.
So we're just going to jump into the responses that we got from folk. Thank you for your in-depth responses. And here we go. So the first, I'll actually let you start off, CJ, because I don't have the questions in front of me.
So the questions that we asked were, what are you uncomfortable talking to your parents about? In what ways is the relationship with your parents healthy? And what ways is it not? If you could change one thing about the way you were raised, what would it be? And what's one thing about the way you were raised that you appreciate? And of course, we put up as we normally do. Feel free to answer none, some, or all of these. And y'all answered all of them. So thank you. We got someone's wrote that they were not comfortable talking about sex, which is it's always like, who is comfortable talking with their parents about sex? And some people do have that relationship, but I can't wrap my head around it because I guess this person wrote sex, not like STDs or the fact that I've had sex, but I'm not going to go into detail about who I've had sex with and fun new sex positions I want to try. Imagine talking to your parents. Oh, what are y'all trying in the bed these days?
I think that's interesting because I don't think that's something that's necessary. Like, I don't think you necessarily need to talk to your parents about that. I don't think they're there for that, in my opinion, right? I think that's what your friends are for. But like, I can understand. I mean, you've had this issue where you can't talk to your parents about sex. And I have always been more comfortable talking to my dad about it just because my dad was the first person I went to when I got my period. Well, he was, in all fairness, he was the first person I saw. But then he like took me under his wing and was like, it's going to be okay, So, yeah, but it's interesting because I am actually quite comfortable talking to him about, not in depth, but I'm actually quite comfortable talking to my dad about sex. But you know what? I don't know if he's comfortable. Actually, now that I think about it, I think that's more of a me thing because I talk and he just sits there and he's like, mm-hmm. And I'm just like, all right, so then this happened, but not in detail, but, yeah, sex is something that it's unfortunate that a lot of people don't feel comfortable talking about it in general, but especially with their parents when like they know. So the first time you had sex, I don't know who I told. It was probably a friend, but like if I'm remembering correctly, I remember wanting to share that with my mom, but I couldn't because there was that disconnect, right? It's like sex is like off the books. We don't talk about it at all. And it's like, why? I just want to tell you that I had this experience. We don't have to go into detail again, but I had this life-altering experience. Not that it was good or bad. It was just life-altering. And it's like, I want to share that with you. But then it's like, roadblock, no. I didn't tell my dad either. But because, again, it was kind of like, and, I was a little young. And maybe that's a part of it, too. We're young. And so we don't know how to express ourselves exactly. But it would be nice if there was like a safer space for that communication that started from home.
I think in future, well, even our generation, but even moving forward, that's going to be different. I feel parents, they'll be more comfortable with letting their kids talk to them about sex.
Yeah. Okay. So another response that we got, it says, I'm uncomfortable with talking to my parents about anything because I've never felt fully safe since this person was a child. And they also went on to say that, I'm just going to read it fully because it's a really good one. I am uncomfortable talking to my parents about anything because I never felt fully safe since I was a child. I have felt like my parents were toxic. I grew up with a narcissistic father and a codependent mother. So it's safe to say I don't trust any of them. Yeah.
You have a narcissistic person and a codependent person.
So that's basically a match made in heaven.
Wow.
Yeah. So with that sucks. That's really unfortunate that you've never felt safe enough to even engage. Even now as an adult, you don't feel safe enough to engage with your parents about most anything. But I don't know, that would leave me feeling incredibly vulnerable throughout my entire life. And I think this is where that whole, like, you try to find outside sources to fill the voids that your parents should hold. I don't know exactly this person's situation, but if someone is left feeling like this from childhood, it makes sense that they would fill those voids however they deem necessary, whether it's healthy, they enter healthy relationships or friendships, or not. Probably unhealthy, because that's just how it often works out. Yeah, and I wonder, like, I don't know if I'm moving too forward, but I wonder if, see, this is why we shouldn't be having kids. Because, like...
Thank you.
Like, because we have our own problems that we have to work out. Like, these issues, these traumas from childhood, and it's like, work on the issues, because you were just projecting that and perpetuating the cycle.
The thing is, like, it's being in a place where you could actually be honest and self-aware, because a lot of these people, like a narcissistic parent, a codependent parent, don't probably see that they're these people, especially the narcissistic person. I don't think they're going to readily be like, oh, you know what? You're right. I am narcissistic and I need to work on that. So that's when it's like, it's really dangerous, because then you're just not thinking about that. And then you're having children, and it'd be great for people to sit there before deciding to have kids, deciding what it is about them that they need to work on. But again, you have some people with personalities that sort of completely block them from even getting to that point. And then it affects the children this way. And I think that's the kind of parental relationship that you, probably the best thing to do would not be to try to heal it, but to just distance yourself, stay away. Yeah. Because I don't see the parents being in a space where they're going to readily be willing, where they're going to be willing to go through with the healing.
Yeah. So
there's this person who, they didn't write this to us, but they told me that they were struggling with, well, their parents were always fighting, and the parents are still together, and this person's an adult now. Hold on, my grandmother's calling me. So this person was talking about how their parents, as a child, they were always fighting, and as this person grew up, they really saw how incompatible their parents were. And as an adult, they want to talk to their parents about this, about the possibility of breaking up. So that's something that they're comfortable with talking to their parents about. But I always was under the impression that if two people are in a bad relationship, they don't get along, and they do have kids, maybe it's still in the end, or in the long term, that it's better to still get that divorce or to separate, even while the children are young. Because, you know, you'll hear a lot, well, we stayed together for the kids. Because,
which I truly hate.
Yeah, because what kind of tension are you bringing into the house, and how is that affecting the child? And how does the child's perspective on love is skewed. And so I heard someone say that it'd be better if they had the divorce when the children became adults, because that's when the child is an adult now, they can sort of process it better. And they have the mental capacity to process it better. As a child, it might lead to trauma. But I think that's when it's also really big on whether your parents are healthy as people. Because if they are, then maybe what they're going to try to do first is work on their relationship to have a good relationship. But if they get to the point where they're still going to divorce, they have to be mentally mature enough to help the child through that process.
Right. And they have to put in the work.
Yeah, they have to put in the work. But it's kind of hard to do it because you're just focused on you and your soon-to-be ex-partner. And what does that divorce look like? What am I getting? What are you getting? Or, we know that divorces get ugly. And So then you're not too focused on the child, and then that traumatizes the child. So I can see where this person was coming from, saying, well, if that person was older, they could process all of that better. But I guess it's never easy to see your parents split, even when you want even when you want it to happen. But
so my take on that is I don't agree with that person. I think if you are involved in a relationship if you are in a relationship and there are children involved and the relationship begins to disintegrate, I think that it would be in the best interest of each party to separate, because it's almost like double trauma, for the child at least. It's going to be hard either way, but I think it will be more traumatic if you as parents are living in an environment and creating an environment that's so incredibly toxic because you're trying to stick it out for the kids because they'll be able to better understand. First of all, give your kids some credit. Give them credit. They'll understand. I mean, maybe if they're 3, they won't. But if you have a very basic conversation with a child and it's heartfelt and you are thorough in that conversation, they will understand. They may not like it. They may not understand everything, but they'll be open. And so long as you keep that communication open with them, you keep that communication live rather, I think it would be better for the child. And also, as a product of divorce, that sounds so bad. But as a kid who went through a divorce, either, my parents divorced, it can get really ugly. It's almost like you're not watching your life sometimes. And I get that. I've been there. And what I would say to people who are maybe going through that, and, there are children involved, just really talk to your kids because they see everything. Whether you want to believe that you're shielding them or you have their best interest, they see everything. We see everything. We are aware. Give us more credit. Talk to them. And it's not in their best interest, at least in my opinion, for you to stick it out for the kids. That makes no sense because you are miserable with each other. And honestly, in order for parents to be effective in the way that they need to be happy first.
Yeah.
And if you're not happy first, we fail all around.
And it's hard too because when, let's say they do divorce and you think, okay, that's good because now the child's not going to be in this toxic home. There's still so much toxicity because the parents still can't agree on how exactly. So they still feel that tension if they're not agreeing on how, or if they're not working on their relationship. You still, of course, it's going to be maybe a lesser relationship. There's more boundaries, I guess, involved, but you still have to have a relationship with that person. And if you're just, like you said, scorned and it's just a lot of spite, then yeah, it's still tough on the child even after the divorce. So parents need to be ready to heal their relationship even after the breakup. And that's why you shouldn't have kids if you're not going to do that. Yeah,
I agree. So do you have another response?
No.
The last response here is my actual needs, which also relatable.
Yeah. Your parents, they should be able to recognize your needs. They're the one that raised you. If anyone's going to know you best outside of yourself, it should be your parent. But they're so focused on maybe what they needed when they were children. Or they're just focused on what they think you need, and they don't want you, they're not giving you the time to tell you what they need. Or they're not listening to you when you do tell them.
So that is a good point that I very recently someone very close to me was telling me that as they were growing up, they never felt heard, and they felt like their needs were never met. So now that they're now an adult, they are making decisions which aren't always completely thought out. Although they may think it is, it's not. They're not. But they're making decisions, almost rash decisions, because now they feel like at this point, I was never listened to. I was never heard. I'm going to do what I want because I'm able to. And that is alarming. And that's also something that we need to consider when parenting. We need to listen to our kids. They are our kids. Yeah, we made them. Not we, y'all made them. And I get that you want full reign over that, but also listen to them because they're humans and they are not robots. They are not although they are reflections of you, they are not you.
So I was just gonna say real quick to someone said that it's not, children are not your property. Mm-hmm. They just came through you. You were the means how they got here. But like you said, they're their own person. Yeah. And
it's funny because this person always says that. She says, I'm my own person. And it took, when she first started saying this, I was like, girl, we know, we get it. But I wasn't listening to what she was actually saying. And what she really meant is I'm my own person. I'm able to make my own decisions. So stop thinking for me. Allow me to think and make my mistakes and live, And going back to what I was saying, I think oftentimes parents, they look at the mistakes that either they've made, their parents made, that they made, or that they made with some of their other children. And then they want to fix them by going hard. Maybe not going hard. Maybe that's not what they want to say, but just making every decision that they think is right for a child. And then they never get the consideration of the actual child that they're speaking of or making decisions for. And that often turns out bad because the kid ends up resenting the parent. And when they're able to, they make decisions for themselves, like I said before, sometimes rash or poorly thought out, but then they follow through with them because it's a decision that they made and they have complete autonomy over that decision. If parents allowed, just gave kids the ability to be a part of the discussion, these dramatic jumps wouldn't be so dramatic.
Yeah. Yeah.
These dramatic decisions wouldn't be so dramatic.
Right. And then you'd worry less because when you making these decisions for your children all the time, and then it gets to a point where they make their own decision and then it's a big one. And maybe it's going to turn out bad. Maybe they even know it's going to turn out poorly, but
it was theirs to make.
Right. But they made it because they just felt so oppressed by your wants for them that they wanted to do something big to burst out of that. And they needed to do something big to burst out of that. You're again, going back to something we were saying last week or a couple weeks ago, you're not getting their permission to bring them here. But now that they are here to tell you what they want, what they need, how they're feeling, you're still not doing it. And it's gonna cause that person to move away from you, and you're not in a way that you're not going to be okay with.
So I read the last response that we have here. For question 3 and 4, well, honestly, hopefully just a new set of parents who get a chance to heal and know how to effectively communicate and know their worth. And And then I appreciate being in juvenile facilities because it taught me how to process. If I would have grown up in my toxic environment at home, I would have no idea how to communicate. That's why I talk about my issues. They trigger my family members because they never had time to deal with it.
Wow. That's not even like, I appreciate my parents for doing this. That's like, I appreciate for not being around my parents. I'm appreciative of not being around my parents.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, wow is right. I don't even know how to respond to that. I don't know if I want to respond to that. That's
yeah, I guess it's just
that hurts my heart. It really does. It hurts my heart. Mm-hmm. I think it's and it's just so sad and so unfortunate and scary that this person's not alone in that. They're not alone. There are millions of children all around the world who have gone through this same exact thing, and no one's talking about it, and no one's taking any responsibility for it. Mm-hmm. That is a shame. That is a crying shame to me.
So I feel like the bond or the relationship with the parents is also romanticized. Like we were saying about how the parents think, or future parents think about what their relationship with their child is going to be like. You know, now the child has this idea of what the relationship with their parents is supposed to be like. And so they continue to be around their parents and live in that toxicity because they think at some point it's supposed to get good. We're supposed to make it and heal and be in love with each other and whatnot. But again, you can't choose who your parents are, and you can't choose the kind of people they are.
So it's funny that you say that, because there was a time where I wanted to break up with my dad. And it's not easy. It's not easy at all. It's you not only do you want the person to change, but I mean, I think, like you said, you have to realize that this is who they are, and whatever issues that they have, that's for them to deal with, and that's for them to fix, and it's not on you, and it's not a reflection of you. And it's okay for you to want to distance yourself from that person. For me, it ended up working out because I didn't give up on that man, because I love that man. But the relationship ended up getting a lot better because he began to hold himself accountable, and he began to listen to what his kids were saying. So I think it can work out, but it's not easy, and it took years. When I'm telling you, it took years for me, I'll just speak for myself, to get over certain things and like to work around certain things. And it wasn't easy. And there were times where we would clash and we would butt heads. And I said some really vile things to him, vile. And it, the cliche saying, it got a lot worse before it got better, but then it did get better. And I think not every relationship is like that, but sometimes it can work. Sometimes it does work. I'm just thankful that he is the type of person that over time saw that we were deeply hurt from his direct actions and changed it. That's not for everyone. That doesn't happen to everyone, but I don't know. It's just, it's difficult because it takes so long, and if it works, then it works, and it takes that time. But then sometimes you're waiting for forever, and because they're your parent, you will wait. You will. I did. But it's not that easy. It's mentally, emotionally, physically, sometimes draining. But yeah, it's just it's not that easy, and it takes a toll on everyone involved. And it's funny because then you have not outside sources, but people even within the family that will say, move on, leave, move on, leave. That's my whole nigga. But like, just leave him go, let it go, live your life. But it's, how can you move on if this is a part of your life? This is a part of your story. This is a part of your day to day. It's not, you can't, you have to fix it. So I think that's where people, that's where they fall into that pit of like having to fix it, not only having to fix the parent involved, but because whatever that trauma is, whatever their relationship, it directly affects you in your day to day. You have to, it's not just that easy to take yourself out of the equation. And even when you do take yourself out of the equation, you find yourself circling back, you know? So that's it. Moral of the story, just be mindful. And if you are currently a parent and this moment on, from the moment you hear this, listen to your kids. Take what your kids say seriously, add them, involve them in the conversations that revolve around them, which probably 90% of your conversations are. Involve them, speak to them, let them know what's going on. Make it so that they're comfortable coming to you. Because a lot of people think, oh, my kid will come to me with anything. And they don't. They let you think that because they're still afraid. And it's just that they're still afraid to come at you with the real things because they're afraid of your response.
How do we approach our parents who have traumatized us, maybe in some way, or even if traumatized is too strong of a word for what is actually going on in your relationship with your parents, still there are things that we'll be afraid to approach them. How do we do that? Do we know our parents to be the type of people who will respond positively to that or negatively? And if it's negative, do we try to work on it? How do we work on it? Or do we distance ourselves? Is it worth distancing ourselves? Is it worth approaching them? It's just a lot. And we didn't really, I guess, have answers to that. So if that's what you were looking for, I apologize. If nothing else, since we didn't have all the answers to how do you deal with your parents in certain situations, if nothing else, we hope that you can find a support system in us, or just in here, like, okay, yeah, people are talking about it, people are having issues. Let me talk. Maybe I need to open up a little bit more with my friends and just be honest, or with myself, about how I'm feeling about my parents and how they're affecting me. How is it halting my growth? And how I could move forward. Till next time. Until next time.